What's going on, guys? My name is Curry Tech and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at two $1,600 PC build guides that I have put together myself, featuring AMD's second or third generation Ryzen CPUs and Intel's 10th generation CPUs, both 8-core 16 threads. We're going to see which one is better for gamers and also multi-threaded applications, and also just for editing, streaming, and just an overall which one is going to be a better system for you. Now, taking a look at the AMD system, we have, of course, the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X at a 3.6 gigahertz clock and boosting up to around, I believe, 4.4 gigahertz, as I could see. Yes, 4.4 gigahertz. That's usually the stock one that you can get. You can also go to Silicon Lotteries and also get a little bit higher bin ones. But why am I going with a third generation CPU when there are Ryzen 4000 or 4th gen Ryzen CPUs out on the market right now? Currently on the market right now, it's very hard to find these chips. The Ryzen 7 5800X was in stock for a good amount of time on Amazon, as I saw on Amazon, and also the Ryzen 5 5600X. But these newer CPUs do cost a lot more. An 8-core 16-thread Ryzen 7 5800X will give you a little 20% more better performance and 16% IPC increase, but with the cost of around $100 more, I just didn't think it would fit in the build, at least for this $1,600 budget. As yes, the CPU is a very important part in playing games and multi-thread tasks, but also when you're gaming, a lot of people need a really good graphics card because that is where your FPS is coming from. And I focused a lot of the budget around the graphics card. So we'll be getting to that part later on to the video. An 8-core 16-thread processor performs definitely on par to a Intel i9-9900K, which is Intel's 9th generation top-of-the-line CPU. Now, to cool the CPU non-overclocked, it actually comes with a stock cooler, which is not per se the best, but not per se the worst. It's kind of like in the middle of cooling. It's definitely enough to get your Ryzen 7 3700X going, and it's just overall a pretty good stock air cooler. Now, moving on to the motherboard, we actually do have the MSI B550A Pro. Now, since we are going to a $1,600 PC build, we want to have that newer chipset so that we can, down the line, possibly upgrade. Now, there is no such thing as future-proofing, but there is mapping out some roadmaps to maybe upgrading your system later down the line in case you don't want to, upgrade something. Now, obviously, if you don't want to pay the extra money for a B550, getting a MSI B450 motherboard or any B450 chipset is totally worth it. On this motherboard, there is no Wi-Fi, but if you do need Wi-Fi, there are motherboards like this one that have Wi-Fi built in. This comes with an Ethernet jack and all the capabilities and whistles that you would need for a $1,600 PC. All the fan headers you could think of, 4 DIMM slots for RAM, featuring a max capacity of 128 gigabytes, and DDR4 support up to 4400 megahertz. And getting into RAM, we actually went with the G-Skills Ripjaws V16, a 2x8 gigabyte kit, clocked at 3600 megahertz each at CL18. Now, I could have gone with CL16, but this would have actually put the price a little bit higher than 1600, which you can do. You can go with Castellane C16, as the higher you go in clocks on RAM, the less tighter the timings are. You want to have tighter timing RAM so it can perform as best as it can. The RAM prices right now have actually gone up quite a bit during quarantine and because of all the new tariffs that have been happening around the world right now. So all we could do is just hope for the best. Moving on to storage, we actually have the Crucial P1 1 terabyte NVMe solid state drive. Now, I've been using this in many of my PC build guides. 1 terabyte for $100 is just something you can't beat in price. 1 terabyte, $100. I mean, come on. It's just, you can't beat it. Now, comparing this to a Samsung 970 EVO 1 TB, yeah, the Samsung EVO is obviously going to be faster, but is that additional speed really going to matter to you? Not really. PCIe Gen 3 speeds versus PCIe Gen 4 speeds, no one can really feel the difference between those two. So even PCIe Gen 3 versus a faster PCIe Gen 3 M.2, people don't notice the difference. And that is where you can save money on a build like this. 1 TB of solid state NAND flash storage is definitely great to have. You can also add SSD storage as well, but 1 TB is definitely enough unless you're having to download Warzone and Cold War and other games that take up a lot of space on your storage. Moving on to the graphics card, which is the main thing of a gaming slash streaming, rendering, editing PC for any YouTuber or just at home gamer, is the RTX 3080 10 GB NVIDIA Founders Edition. Now, this is the Founder Edition's card, which goes for around $700 MSRP, but at the moment, eBay and OfferUp, I believe, might have these for around $800 to $900. OfferUp for sure will have it for a little bit less than eBay. I know eBay has been jacking up these prices up to $2,000, but if you are lucky and you find one that is worth on OfferUp or something used for $750 or $800, I say that it's completely worth it to get it, as eBay has been jacking up these prices. The RTX 3080 actually features a 12-pin connector for the GPU for power, so it does suck to have that 12-pin connector, but you're saving the most money on it, but still getting great performance. 10 gigabytes of VRAM. It's an RTX 3080. It's great. Has over 8,000 CUDA cores. I might be wrong, 7,000, but it's definitely no joke of a GPU. There's a reason why you can never find any of the NVIDIA or AMD cards, because it is such high demand. Moving on to the case, you have the Corsair 4000D Airflow mid-tower case, all black, features support for, I believe, a 360 in the front, and also a 240 on the, no, a 360 on the top as well, I believe. Yes, it is a 360 on the top. I'm not sure because I haven't looked at the case all entirely, but that is definitely enough for a 360 on the top, and also a 360 right here, because you can see a slit right here that you could probably take out. Sorry. It's a great case for airflow. Has the slits in the front to allow air in. Now, whether or not full mesh or this is better, I still believe full mesh is probably better for airflow, as these slits probably don't allow as much air in, but it's definitely a lot. And an alternative to this could be the Meshify C airflow from Fractal Design, which is actually a little bit more expensive by like $6, but it definitely allows more airflow to travel into the case. And the reason why I chose this case, and why you see this on a lot of YouTubers' videos, are because the amount of airflow it can move for these really hot components. You want the best airflow in your case, especially with the RTX 3080. The RTX 3080 is a monster for a power draw, and also allowing heat into the environment of the PC. You want to get rid of that heat as much as possible. Powering the system, you have the Corsair RM750 80 plus gold, modular, fully modular. Now, an alternative to this could be an 80 plus bronze 750, but you definitely want 750 watts 80 plus bronze certified. You don't have to get modular. It could be semi-modular. You can save money on this, but for a $1,600 build, an 80 plus gold efficient power supply is definitely something that you want, as it is more efficient at producing the wattage needed for the system. Now we're going to transition over to the Intel build. Basically here we have the Intel i7 10700K competing with the Ryzen 7 3700X. Now both are 8-core 16-thread processors with hyper-threading enabled. The i7 10700K has a 3.8 gigahertz base and a 5.1 gigahertz max boost. So that is very good for a CPU like this. Obviously, it's on Intel's 14 nanometer plus architecture, and the IPC increase is not as great as the Ryzen third generation CPUs. But comparing this, this is an i9 9900K, just slightly overclocked further, only for $250 at Micro Center. Micro Center has a great deal on this for $250 in store only, and it is great for the price of an i9 9900K, which is basically the top of the line CPU that would go for $500. So it's crazy to think that it's almost half the price of it. So now, would you want to go with Intel on 14 nanometer? Well, if you're only going for gaming, then go with an Intel system if you really want to. I don't I don't really recommend any of Intel's CPUs right now, but if you are really want the fastest, you want the most FPS, the i7 10700K will barely out edge the Ryzen 3700X by 1% in performance. Now, keep in mind, this CPU, when it first came out, was around, I would want to say, upwards of 300 something dollars. So it was definitely not this price. So that's why it's not a fair comparison in price to the Ryzen CPU. But performance wise, they are both equal. In terms of multi-threaded workloads, the Ryzen 7 3700X will definitely beat this in multi-threaded workloads, but the 10700K will probably keep up in certain applications as well. For gaming, the CPU is absolutely a monster at it. Even though it's Intel, don't bag on Intel. They killed themselves with their own 11th gen CPUs. I don't even want to talk about that. The 10th generation series is better than the 11th gen series. Kind of sad. But moving on from that, you have the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Black Edition cooling the CPU. Obviously, when you have such a high-end CPU pulling in a lot of wattage and it's on a 14 nanometer node, it's not going to be as efficient as the Ryzen 7 3700X at temperature-wise and also wattage. So you need a heat air cooler on it. And the Cooler Master Hyper 212 is the most inexpensive but also aesthetically pleasing newer addition to the Hyper 212 Evo, which was actually a silver one, which was greatly reviewed by enthusiasts and also used in one of my librarians' PC builds at my school. Moving on, obviously, when you have an i7, you want to put that in a motherboard that is able to handle that with all the VRMs. Now, nice reliable VRMs and also a great motherboard BIOS, MSI is there to shine. The MSI Z490A Pro ATX LGA 1200 features all the support you could think of for an Intel CPU. All the features, 128 gigabytes of memory for RAM and PCIe Gen 3. So that's about it. It's a great motherboard. Has all the features, bells and whistles that you would need. Has a bunch of PWM fan headers, an 8+4 pin CPU power, and 2x16 slots and 3x8 slots, and also a bunch of SATA connectors. So it's a very good motherboard. MSI always has great motherboards, so I always rely on them. This is the G.Skill Ripjaws V16 gigabyte kit, and I'm telling you, this G.Skill Ripjaws series memory is just the best to get on the market for memory right now that are non-RGB. This is 3200 speed because Intel CPUs do not benefit that much as Ryzen CPUs do off of high-speed memory, but we opted for the CL16 memory for tighter memories timings, so that's going to be great for the system. And you can't go wrong. This is my classic, the Crucial P1 1 terabyte solid state drive, $140. I mean, do I have to explain it anyway? And here, of course, this is where you'll be getting a lot of your FPS in games and also for your editing. And when you're exporting high quality videos at 4K, 1440p, the RTX 3080 is there to do it with GPU acceleration and NVIDIA's own encoder as well, which is very great at recording videos and also live streaming. 10 gigabytes of VRAM. I went over it in the other PC guide, but it's just great. $700. Can't beat it. Next, on the case, I actually went a different route, and I went with a Fractal Design Mesh 5C, as this system will be producing a lot more heat in terms of the CPU, because I know Intel CPUs run definitely hotter than AMD CPUs, and you want the most airflow coming into this case. So this is the Fractal Design Meshify C, which features a 280 millimeter rad support in the front and also a 360 in the front, I believe, as there's a slit, I believe, right here to take it out and put a 360 millimeter rad, unless I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can fit one there. If you can't, you can fit a 280 in the front, a rear exhaust fan. Features support for ITX, ATX, and EATX motherboards, and also DTX motherboards. I believe it was DTX motherboards. Oh, my bad. Micro ATX, not EATX. That's the other case I was thinking of. But this is a great PC case. Great cable management in the back. Comes with some straps as well. Great for cable management. Good enough space for your cables and excess cables. Can't say much about it. Now, this is where we run into some very interesting topics of which routes we can go. Obviously, I was really thinking about going with a bronze, but I just couldn't do that. And I went with the ARM 750. You can also go with Gigabyte's own lineup of power supplies, NZXTs. EVGA is probably the most reliable, and Corsair for power supplies throughout the years. 8 plus gold, 750 watts is definitely going to be enough. If you want to go with a 650, that is okay, but I really like a power supply where I have 200 watts or more of leeway with the system. And this all comes out to a total of $1,500. Sorry, $1,582. So it's definitely close to $1,600, but not over the price. And also, let me go back to the $1,500 build. This build actually comes out to be $1,584, so close to $1,600. And honestly, I would really like this AMD system because, PCIe Gen 4, the Ryzen support for Ryzen 5000 series when it does come out, definitely you have upgradability pathways, whereas the Intel system, you're not going to be able to use the same motherboard as the 11th gen, you can use the 11th gen CPUs into that socket, but after that, you're going to have to get a new motherboard in case you want to go to 12th generation. But definitely, both systems are very good. But at the moment, AMD is the one winning in the market just because of the IPC increases and the price of performance. You can't beat with these Ryzen CPUs. 7 nanometer technology versus 14 nanometer definitely shows 14 nanometers age, and Intel killing itself with its only 11th generation lineup. But don't worry, 12th generation Alder Lake S seems to where Intel might be able to get back into the game. So keep up with those news. I'll be posting more videos about that, and also talking about Intel's 13th generation Meteor Lake S CPUs based on their own in-house 7 nanometer process in 2023, if possible. So stay tuned on the channel for that. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, subscribe. It means a lot to the channel. We are about to break 600 views on a video in the past. So I'm super pumped about that. And I'm just happy to go through this amazing journey with you guys. Anyway, peace out. And I hope you enjoy your guys' day.